So these are going to be the top 5 best decks for you to climb to Legend before the new expansion, or just push to whatever rank you want to get before the new expansion comes out. And the first one is Hound Hunter. It's just statistically the best deck in the game. The Hollow Hound absolutely broke an already good deck by giving it survivability to deal with aggro and mid-range decks. You have an OTK combo with King Crush as well as the Faithful Companions, and because you're Hunter, you're fairly aggressive and can win games fast as well. It's just the perfect deck that is weak at no points in the game. The next deck on this list is going to be Control Priest, and I like this deck the most because Crimson Clergy and the Handmaiden give you a lot of extra draw, and the Holy Nova gives you early removal and gives you security in the early game, and I think that's worth it to give up a little bit of late game power, because at the end of the day, you still have infinite resource generation with Sisters Falna, you still have good resource generation with Identity Theft, Love Everlasting as mana cheat, late game win condition, Astalor plus Power Chord Synchronize, not to mention a couple of other big things and ETC's banned. The next deck on this list is Enrage Warrior, and it's not a deck that I personally enjoy, it's just not my playstyle, but it is really strong, so it deserves to be on this list. It's one of the main counters to Big Beast Hunter. Basically, your minions, you pump them up to be so big, the Hollow Hound and the Hydrolodon aren't enough to kill off your minions, and then you just overwhelm the opponent with big stats and potentially even a big minion from hand, like Olgra, Remornir, or Grommash. This deck does potentially lose to hard control decks and things with silence, so mostly Priest. So if you go against that, no worries, it's just a bad matchup. But yeah, overall, I think this deck is really good, especially if you like Warrior. Next up is Totem Shaman. This is a deck that I've played a decent amount, and I have to say, it's deceptively good. You have, obviously, totems and they're weak and you can kill them off relatively easily, but as soon as you get a board to stick, you can win the game with Bloodlust or the Stone Right. And if they end up wiping your board, you still have Thing from Below, Gigant Totem, and Rotgill as potentially good mid to late game win conditions if your opponent does manage to wipe your first board. It's actually a lot stronger than I thought it would be. It does lack a little bit of draw, so you can sometimes run out of steam, but it's probably one of the best pure aggro decks in the game. And last but not least, before we get to the 2 honorable mentions, is Pure Paladin. It's still, in my opinion, just the best beginner deck out there. You got good stats, good tempo. You do have to think about trading sometimes, especially with Divine Shield and the weapon Horn of the Windlord, but it's pretty simple because at the end of the day, you want to get big stats and usually you want to go face. So if you're a beginner, this is definitely a great deck for you. Last, we have 2 honorable mentions, and the first one is going to be Naga Mage. The reason it's on this list as an honorable mention is because at the highest ranks of play, it's pretty good. And for those of you who watched the stream where I played it, I went, I think, 9-3, and it pushed me almost to Legend, and it felt really strong after you got the hang of playing a bunch of cards in one turn. It's not for the faint of heart, and if you aren't confident in your ability to discover a bunch of cards, play a bunch of cards, and attack with a bunch of things all in the same turn, don't play it. But if you like that kind of stuff and you like Miracle Rogue, you're definitely going to like this deck as well. And the last deck on the list is going to be the Dark Horse deck, Curse Warlock. The reason it's a Dark Horse is because it's really low on a lot of the win rates and tier lists, and I've bashed on this deck for a long time, but I played it and got to Legend, and it felt surprisingly good. Basically, Defile is one of the best removal cards ever printed and helps you stay alive in the early game, along with some early heal like Armor Vendor and the Drain Soul. You have Fizzle to generate extra curses to help you against control decks. Same with Symphony of Sins, gets you more cards and burns your opponent's cards against control decks. And yes, Abyssal Wave is slow, but still 6 mana to do 4 damage to all enemy minions is enough to kill a lot of things most of the time. And if you're playing against a Thaddeus deck, like a Thaddeus Druid that gets it out on turn like 5 or 6, Siphon Soul can kill that one big minion without too much of a problem. Overall, this is the list. I would not go out of my way to craft too many of these unless you already have most of the cards, because again, the meta is going to completely change in about a week. This is, again, for the people who want to climb to the highest rank they can before the new expansion, just to get more of a star bonus so you can get to the rank you want next expansion.